Welcome to Deep Thought. Develop your will. Now, the will is very misunderstood in this culture. But your will is really the ability to make a conscious choice to impose your higher self on your lower self at crossroads moments. Let me say that again. It's the ability of your higher self to impose controls over the lower self at crossroad moments. And before I get deeper into that, let me explain what the will is not. Like, you ever see like a kid or increasingly adults who are just stubborn and they just won't do anything, they won't cooperate or anything with somebody, even if it's in their own best interest, and people say they have a strong will. No, that's not a will at all. That's being stubborn, because a lot of times what they're doing, that's an emotional thing. Because if you do something that's against your own best interest, that's being stupid, really. That's not a strong will. You're not thinking, you're just being it just because of some emotional way. You don't like the person trying to get you to do something, or you want to be petty or something. Being petty is not being strong-willed or anything. That's just being petty. That's an emotional thing. So it's not being stubborn. The will is that mechanism where you make a conscious choice not to do something, or not to let your emotional side take you to another level. Now, you know what? I kind of did this ass backwards, but we already in the video, right? I should have talked about the 3 levels of man, and I'll do that in my next podcast. Anyway, the will is that mechanism, right? Well, the will is that mechanism because most people are moved by their emotion. They move by their subconscious. They move by stuff that is really not under their conscious control. They overeat, they overindulge in sex, they have a lot of bad habits, they smoke. Even though you can have, even though there are plenty of information out there about overeating, even though there's information about like how smoking will harm you. I mean, I've seen pregnant women smoke and kept smoking during pregnancies and not thinking, oh, this might harm the child, because they were addicted to it. That's not a strong will. Masturbation. We were recently talking about no fapping and all of that. If you can't stop it and impose your will, that's a weak will. See, the funny thing is, the overwhelming majority of the population has not developed their will. The overwhelming majority of the population is in a juvenile stage of development where they just do whatever. The evidence of that is there's a large police force and security measures. If you had a critical mass of the population who have developed their will truly, you wouldn't need a large police presence because they will regulate themselves. If the majority of society needs outside regulation, that means there's a massive problem with the development of the will. A person with their will developed, you don't have to have a threat of imprisonment or being killed or being arrested to keep them from doing wrong. They'll just do it wrong because they will impose their will over the self that wants to do wrong. So the will is control over your animal self. It's discipline. It's being able to say you come to a crossroads, instead of reacting with emotion or reacting on instinct, you're able to make a conscious choice and say, this is the path I'm going to take. That's the will. Now, one of the reasons why it's not as prevalent in this particular culture is, well, we don't have rites of passages. We don't have mechanisms which delineate between someone being a juvenile and someone being an adult. We just let them grow up. We think, I mean, high school graduation don't mean having some degree, or a college degree don't do it. Those are really just certifications. Those are not rites of passage which say, you know what, you've passed this rites of passage and now you're an adult. See, a rites of passage ain't just mere ceremony. They are exercises to teach a man or a woman how to impose their will on their lower self, over their instinctual self, over their child self that just does whatever. Because you see it like, okay, like you go in stores sometimes, you see some badass kids knocking over stuff, acting all crazy. Their will isn't developed. Now, as they grow older, a lot of times, if you really look at a lot of adults, that hasn't changed. That's why you can go maybe to a sports event or something, and you got grown people, adult people ready to fight each other. That's not the will. They haven't developed the ability to regulate it, to regulate their will. You know? That's why you get people, like I mentioned, weight loss. That's why you have so many things out here and so many people having trouble losing weight, because they haven't imposed their will over the things that's within them that's causing them to put it on anyway. Over their emotions or something that's causing them to eat or maybe not exercise. And really on a deeper level, just whatever it is causing them to be sedentary enough to put on weight. Or they eat the certain foods that they eat. I mean, how many people out here eating foods that they know are bad for them? That say, hey, if you eat this food, it gives you high blood pressure, or it can exacerbate diabetes or something. Their will isn't there. See, someone whose will is developed will be like, I'm going to cut this cold turkey. Now, you got some people who develop a smidgen of their will in some areas. You know, I had an aunt. You know, she used to smoke like crazy, but she just went cold turkey one day and hadn't looked back. She had a smidgen of will. Now, she had some other stuff going on too, but which I know the will isn't totally developed, right? But the will, that's the thing. That's the thing someone needs. It has to be a conscious thing. At least start off a conscious thing, because if a person exercise their will, exercise a conscious choice enough, then it becomes a part of their subconscious, and then they don't have to make a conscious decision. It made it for them. It's like the person who says, you know what, I'm not going to smoke. I'm a smoker. I'm not going to smoke anymore. Every single time, see, they exercise the will every time they think about taking that cigarette or taking a puff. And you make a conscious decision not to. That's exercising the will. You know? Now, to develop the will, the best way, really, honestly, is to fast. Is the best way. And when I say fasting, that's not so much as just eating food, but learning how to give up something. You know? Like something like Lent, that's kind of a will development thing. You know, you giving up something. And it's something you got to do day to day, because remember, that subconscious, that emotional self, that lower self wants what it wants. It don't care. It'll eat chocolate all day. Shoot, if it could, it'll bust nut all day, or have sex with, if it's a woman, have sex with strange men all day if you give it a chance. Smoke that cigarette, pot, drugs that, you know it'll kill it. If it could. But every time you get that impulse, if you can make a conscious decision like, no, I'm not going to do this, that's development of the will. You know, if you can maintain it. See, that's the biggest problem with some people. The will isn't developed. It ain't just a one-time thing. It's really a constant thing, imposing your will on your lower self. It's a constant thing. It's a constant battle. And it probably take years before everything just happens automatic. And see, one thing about the will, when it's developed, it's free from coercion. When I say coercion, somebody ain't forcing you to do it. You know, the media ain't forcing you to do it. Your doctor isn't forcing you to do it. You know, and within yourself, it isn't a fear of consequences or something that's forcing you to do it. You doing it because it's in your best interest. See that? Let me get back to that fear thing. A lot of people, they don't do something or do wrong, not because of their will. They'll say, because you get a lot of people who have a lot of fear. They'll say, well, I don't indulge in sex and everything. Well, it's that you indulge in it. You don't indulge it because you got some fears around it. That's not the will. That's fear. See, that's important. You got to ask yourself, why not you doing something? Is it, if it's fear or you fear of the consequences, that ain't the will. That's the consequences. You know, most people would... Only reason, like, some people wouldn't kill another human being is that it's not, like, you know, because it's the right thing not to do. You know, it's the right thing to do is not kill another human being. The reason they don't do it is because they're worried about going to jail. They got to fear how this will disrupt their life if they end somebody's life. See, that's not the will. The will is, like, I won't end this person's life because it's the right thing to do, not to impede their life progress. That's the will. Anytime fear comes in it, even in weight loss or bad habits, if it's like, if you motivated by a fear of dying, that's not the will. Because the will, you exercise the will, is free of all coercion. And it's a choice. Ultimately, everything's a choice. You know, even love is a choice, really. People think, oh, talk about I fell in love and everything. That's your lust talking. You fell in lust. But if you follow that lust, even though it could hurt you, it could like ruin your life, it can ruin families. That's crazy. You know, the will is free of lust or a desire like that. The will is cold-blooded. It's just like, nah, this is the right thing to do. I'm going to impose this on my lower self. You know, I'm not going to do it. You know what? I'm not going to do it. You know, this is the right thing for me. Not because society said so. Not because some spiritual master said so. Not because Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, the great pumpkin, Big Rom said so. You're doing it because it's the right thing for your path in life. You know? Like, even like I mentioned some about like men controlling, exercising sexual discipline. Don't do it because Rom said so. And don't do it because you read in a book or heard from me that, you know, if you channel that sexual energy. Do it because it's good for you. Because ultimately that's what it is. Because you know what? And I hate to say this, but a particular person, it might be good if they masturbate or something. Or it might be good if they eat a little bit extra for their bodies. Because ultimately, when you make that choice, it ain't about what I say or somebody else say. It's about you doing what's right for yourself. And that's being free of coercion from the outside. Not because the media said so, not because your minister said so, not because Linus, prophet of the great pumpkin, said so. And not because you have some internal fear or something, but because in a moment where you totally don't have emotion, you can make that choice. It's like, this is what I'm going to do. And earlier I say the crossroads. Everyone comes to a crossroads where if they go in one direction, their life is gravy. And then some people make the wrong turn and everything goes downhill. In fact, I can guarantee if I talk with anybody long enough and they are totally honest with me, I could probably tell them, all right, all this bad stuff happening. Tell me about your relationships. Tell me what you were doing. Because most crossroad events come in relationships. So it was like, did you exercise a strong will at that moment, or you just went with the flow? A lot of people just go with the flow. You know? A lot of breakups happen not because people didn't exercise a will in a breakup, or first in the choosing of a mate, or then in the breakup of a mate. That's why you got a lot of people, men and, well, mostly women, but some men, you know, they regret, you know, they want to go back to that partner. I say you should have exercised the will at that moment. That's the moment you needed to. When it's a significant thing that could change the path of your life, that's especially when you need the will. Say, you know what? If you're working out and you have a cheat day, that's one thing. And, you know, you take a cigarette every now and then, or, you know, pull your joint like every now and then. That's one thing. But if it's a major event, something that could make or break your life, that's when you need the will. That's when you need to exercise that choice. Like, hold up, this is major. I gotta make sure I ain't doing it out of fear. I ain't doing it out of lust. I ain't doing it because Linus of the prophet of the great pumpkin said so. That's that moment you gotta be like, hold up, let me look at this. Boom. That's when that will gotta come out. So, and I'm gonna get deeper into the will in my next one when I talk about 3 levels of men. All right, and when I say men, that's in terms of, for the women listening, that's just humanity. I'll say 3 levels of humanity. All right. So anyway, right. Think on this. Keep rising and transforming. Peace.